The storm had torn across the prairie with a violence that only open land could truly feel. By morning, the sky had cleared to a pale, exhausted gray, but the earth still bore the marks of what had passed. Deep ruts cut through the trail, filled with muddy water. Branches lay snapped and scattered. Fence posts leaned at uncertain angles, as though reconsidering their place in the world. Elias Carter rode slowly along the northern boundary of his ranch, his horse stepping carefully through the softened ground. He hadn't intended to ride out so early. Sleep had eluded him most of the night, wind rattling the shutters of his small ranch house and stirring old memories he'd preferred buried. When dawn finally broke, he'd saddled up without fully admitting to himself that he was searching for more than broken fencing. Solitude had been his companion for 6 years. Long enough that silence felt normal. Long enough that conversation, even imagined, felt unnatural. The trail curved around a shallow bend near the cottonwoods, and that was when he saw it. A wagon. It stood at an unnatural angle beside the road, one wheel splintered clean through. The canvas cover had ripped loose and now hung in tatters, flapping weakly in the damp breeze. One horse still stood harnessed, trembling and restless. The other lay motionless on its side in the mud. Elias pulled his reins tight, heart giving a hard, sudden thud. Travelers passed through occasionally, families heading west with hope strapped into trunks and barrels. Storms were merciless to such dreams. He dismounted quickly, boots sinking slightly into wet earth. The silence around the wagon felt wrong. No movement, no voices. "Hello," he called out, his deep voice carrying across the clearing. Only the faint creak of loose wood answered. He approached cautiously. A trunk had fallen open near the broken wheel, dresses half dragged into the mud, fabric ruined and heavy with rain. A small tin cup lay overturned. A child's blanket clung to a fence post several yards away. His jaw tightened. He circled toward the front of the wagon first. The driver's bench sagged under the weight of 2 unmoving figures slumped forward. The storm had not spared them. Elias removed his hat slowly, bowing his head for a brief, silent moment. He had seen death before. Too much of it, but there was something particularly cruel about it arriving on the heels of hope. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. Not loud, not even a cry, just a small, uneven breath. He froze. The sound came again, from behind the wagon. Elias stepped carefully around the shattered wheel, heart pounding now for a different reason. He moved slowly, deliberately, as one might approach a wounded animal. And there she was. A little girl stood pressed against the back of the wagon. No more than 5 or 6. Her curls were plastered to her cheeks, dress soaked and muddied to the hem. In her arms, she clutched a worn cloth doll as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Her eyes met his. They were too wide, too still, not crying, not screaming, just watching. Elias crouched immediately, lowering himself so he would not tower over her. "Easy now," he said quietly. She did not move. The wind rustled through the broken canvas above them, carrying away the last whisper of the storm. And in the fragile silence that followed, Elias Carter realized the storm had not taken everything. It had left something behind. Elias kept his distance at first, crouched low so his shadow wouldn't swallow her small frame. The mud sucked softly at his boots as he shifted his weight, careful not to move too quickly. The girl's eyes tracked every motion, wide and guarded, her small fingers knotted tightly in the fabric of the doll she held. "It's all right," he said gently, his voice roughened by years of disuse rather than anger. "I won't hurt you." She didn't answer, didn't blink much either. Her stillness unsettled him more than tears would have. "What's your name?" he asked after a moment, keeping his tone soft, as if speaking to a skittish colt. Silence lingered between them. The breeze tugged at the torn canvas overhead, making it snap faintly. Somewhere nearby, the surviving horse stomped nervously. The girl's lips parted slightly. "Lily," she whispered. The sound was so small he almost thought he imagined it. "Lily," he repeated carefully, as though the name were something fragile. "That's a fine name," she swallowed, her chin trembling just once before going still again. Elias rose slowly to his feet. "Lily, I'm going to take a look up front, all right?" Her gaze flicked toward the front of the wagon, then back to him. She didn't nod, didn't protest, but something in her expression told him she already understood what he would find. He walked back around the wagon with heavier steps this time. He had seen enough storms to know the outcome before he reached the bench. The couple sat slumped where they had tried to ride it out, hands still loosely tangled in reins in each other. Rain had washed the dust from their faces, leaving them pale and final. Elias closed his eyes briefly. He remembered another storm years ago. Different sky, different loss, same hollow aftermath. He removed his hat again, bowing his head. Lord, he muttered under his breath, give me the right words. When he returned to Lily, he kept his expression steady. He didn't force a smile. Children knew falsehood faster than adults. Lily, he said quietly, kneeling again. Were they your mama and papa? Her lower lip quivered. She nodded once. The smallest movement. Elias felt something tighten painfully in his chest. I'm real sorry, he said, and the words were plain because anything fancier would have been dishonest. She stared at him, searching his face as if trying to measure whether sorry could fix what had happened. My mama said we were going west, she whispered. To find a place. He glanced out across the wide stretch of prairie beyond the trees. The land rolled endlessly, beautiful and merciless all at once. I reckon you found one, he said gently. She frowned faintly, confusion crossing her small features. Elias hesitated. He had lived alone long enough that decisions affected only him. What he was about to do would change that. He extended his hand toward her, not grabbing, not demanding. Just offering. Lily, he said, voice low and steady, you shouldn't be out here by yourself. Her eyes dropped to his hand. It was large, roughened by rope burns and hard winters. Not gentle looking, not soft, but it didn't tremble. Come here, he added quietly. We'll get you someplace warm. She looked at him for a long moment. The wind shifted, carrying the fading scent of rain. Finally, slowly, she stepped forward. Her small fingers slipped into his palm. Cold, so cold. Elias closed his hand gently around hers, careful not to squeeze too tight. And in that simple contact, something shifted in the empty spaces inside him. The ride back to the ranch was slow and careful. Elias had lifted Lily onto his horse first, settling her in front of him so he could keep one arm secure around her small frame. She sat stiffly at the beginning, her back straight, as if afraid to lean into him. The prairie stretched wide and endless around them, the storm clouds now breaking apart into pale strips of sunlight that spilled across the wet grass. For a long time, neither of them spoke. He could feel how light she was. Too light. Each bump in the trail made him tighten his hold just slightly, afraid she might slip. Eventually, after several minutes of quiet riding, her rigid posture softened. When the horse stepped over a deeper rut, she instinctively leaned back against his chest. He didn't comment on it. He just adjusted his arm to make sure she felt steady. The ranch house came into view over the rise, a modest structure of weathered wood with a wide porch and a stone chimney. It wasn't grand. It wasn't the kind of place families wrote letters home about. But it was solid. It had stood through many storms. As they approached, Elias felt something unfamiliar creep into his thoughts. Worry. He had lived there alone for 6 years. One bed, one plate set out each night. One chair pulled close to the fire. The silence had become part of the walls themselves. He dismounted first, then reached up for her. Lily hesitated only a second before allowing him to lift her down. Her shoes squelched softly against the damp dirt. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke and leather. Elias moved quickly, stirring the fire back to life until flames licked warmly against the logs. The crackling sound filled the room, chasing away the lingering chill. Sit there, he said gently, guiding her to the chair nearest the hearth. She obeyed, still clutching her doll. He fetched a thick wool blanket from the small trunk near his bed and draped it carefully around her shoulders. She looked smaller wrapped in it, nearly swallowed whole. I'll warm some stew, he added, moving toward the stove. He worked in silence, but his mind churned louder than the fire. What now? The nearest town was a day's ride away. There would be officials, questions, paperwork. Perhaps distant relatives somewhere back east. Or perhaps no one at all. He brought the bowl of stew to her, kneeling so he could hold it steady while she took tentative bites. At first, she ate slowly. Then hunger took over, and she finished it with quiet determination. When she was done, she looked up at him properly for the first time since arriving. Are you sending me away? She asked. The question struck him harder than he expected. He sat back slightly on his heels, studying her small face illuminated by firelight. There was fear there, but also something else. Hope she was almost afraid to feel. Elias glanced around the room. At the single cup on the shelf. The single coat by the door. The single pillow on the bed. 6 years of solitude had shaped him into a man who expected nothing more. He reached out slowly and brushed a stray curl from her forehead. No, he said, his voice steady despite the weight behind it. I reckon I won't be doing that. Her brow furrowed, uncertain. He drew in a slow breath. The words felt larger than anything he had spoken in years. I'll be your father, he said quietly. If you'll have me. Lily stared at him, searching his face just as she had beside the wagon. Then, very slowly, she let go of the doll with one hand and reached forward. Her small arms wrapped around his neck. And for the first time in 6 long years, the house no longer felt empty.